What if the real reason you didn't get that promotion isn't because you didn't work hard enough, but because, you know, you spent your lunch break joking with your coworkers about how broke you are?
Right. Or what if the reason you keep running into the exact same toxic relationship dynamic isn't just bad luck?
Yeah, what if it's the exact words you used to complain about it to your friends?
It's a heavy thought.
It really is.
Yeah.
I want you to really think about how you view your daily existence. Like, when your alarm goes off in the morning, does life feel like this exhausting uphill battle?
Oh, for most people, definitely.
Right, like you are constantly lacing up your gloves to go a few rounds with reality. Because if we were being honest, for a lot of us, the default setting is struggle.
It's that constant grind.
Exactly. We operate on this base assumption that if we aren't pushing and fighting our way through obstacles, we are somehow falling behind. But a century ago, a woman proposed a radical, almost dangerous idea.
And it really flips the whole paradigm.
It does. She proposed that this entire paradigm, the very idea that life is a battle, is fundamentally incorrect. So, okay, let's unpack this. We are taking a massive deep dive today into a set of ideas from a 1925 text.
Yeah, Florence Scovel Shinn's The Game of Life and How to Play It.
That's the one. And her premise is jarringly simple. Life is not a battle. It is a game.
Specifically, a game of giving and receiving.
Right. And playing it successfully doesn't require thicker armor. It requires understanding a set of, well, invisible, unwritten rules.
It is a profound and frankly disorienting shift in perspective.
Yeah.
I mean, when you sit down with Shinn's ideas, you are looking at a fascinating piece of 1920s metaphysical philosophy.
Definitely. It feels older, but also weirdly modern.
Exactly. What makes it so enduring is that it somehow manages to blend early psychological theory, biblical allegory, and what we would absolutely recognize today as the precursors to cognitive behavioral therapy.
Oh, CBT.
Right. Our mission in this deep dive is to extract the architecture of these hidden rules. Shinn lays out a very specific structural map of the human mind.
And she gives a really practical, though sometimes completely counterintuitive framework, right?
She does. It's all about manifesting what she calls the square of life.
Which is health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression.
That's it. And what's truly fascinating here is that it almost doesn't matter whether you look at this through a spiritual lens, a strict psychological lens, or even just as a collection of powerful metaphors.
Because the mechanics are the same.
Exactly. The core principles she discusses regarding human expectation, the mechanics of perception, and the literal vibratory power of language are undeniably potent.
Yeah.
We are looking at a system that suggests, without any room for compromise, that our external reality is a direct, unavoidable reflection of our internal landscape.
And that absolute lack of compromise is exactly what blew my mind as I was going through these notes.
Please do, kids.
I mean, here's a framework constructed a century ago, long before we had modern neuroscience mapping out neuroplasticity, long before quantum physicists were debating the observer effect.
Right, before any of that.
And she is essentially arguing that your thoughts and your words are writing the active code of your physical reality. It sounds like a blend of modern psychology and the Matrix.
It really does.
It's incredible, but it's also highly intimidating. Because if she's right, we are all walking around completely oblivious to the machinery we are operating.
Well, to understand how this game actually works, we have to start where she starts.
Which is this three-part architecture of the human mind, right?
Yeah. She breaks our consciousness down into three distinct departments: the conscious, the subconscious, and the superconscious.
Let's start with the conscious mind, which she calls the mortal or carnal mind.
Good place to start.
According to her framework, this is the part of us that sees life strictly as it appears. It's the reasoning, logical mind. But she argues it is deeply, fundamentally flawed.
Because it is obsessed with fear.
Yes. Fear, limitation, disaster, and sickness.
Precisely. If you want to understand the conscious mind in this framework, think of it as a gatekeeper. But it is a highly anxious, reactionary gatekeeper.
Like someone always waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly. It relies entirely on sensory input. It looks out into the physical world, gathers data, and makes immediate judgments.
So it's very literal about what's in front of it.
Right. If the bank account is low, the conscious mind looks at the math and says, we are poor. We are in danger.
Or if you have a headache, it panics.
Yeah. If there is a physical symptom in the body, the conscious mind feels the pain and says, we are sick. This is a disaster. It deals exclusively in present moment appearances.
And because the physical world is full of variables and dangers, this conscious mind is just constantly vibrating with fear.
Fear, doubt, and defensive logic. But the danger isn't just that the conscious mind experiences these negative emotions. The real danger is the chain of command.
Okay, what do you mean by chain of command?
Well, the conscious mind is constantly, endlessly feeding these fearful observations to the next, much more powerful department, the subconscious mind.
Ah, right.
And this is where the mechanics of her model get incredibly consequential.
Because the subconscious mind, as she describes it, is entirely different. She describes it as pure, raw power without any direction.
Like steam or electricity.
Exactly. It doesn't have an agenda of its own. It doesn't have morals. She actually says it has no sense of humor.
That's a very important point.
And critically, she says it has no power of induction, meaning it can't reason or argue back.
It doesn't debate you.
Right. It simply takes whatever the conscious mind deeply feels or clearly pictures, and it carries it out to the most minute literal detail. It is a completely blind, faithful servant.
It is the ultimate execution engine. I mean, if we look at the psychological mechanics of this, the subconscious mind is responsible for keeping your heart beating, right?
Yeah, regulating your nervous system.
Restoring every memory you've ever had. But in Shinn's framework, it is also the mechanism that connects your internal state to the external world.
So it bridges the gap.
Exactly. When the anxious conscious mind feeds it a vivid picture of poverty, maybe you are staying up late, sweating over a spreadsheet, vividly imagining losing your home.
We've all been there.
The subconscious doesn't say, oh, my host is just worrying, I should comfort them.
It doesn't give you a hug.
No, it says, this is the blueprint we have been given. The command is poverty and loss. I must now marshal all my resources to make this vivid picture a physical reality.
Wow. So it treats your worst fears as direct orders.
Precisely.
I was trying to come up with a modern analogy for this, and it really feels like the subconscious mind is a highly advanced, ultra-expensive 3D printer.
That's a great way to look at it.
Or maybe like a master computer algorithm. The 3D printer doesn't care what it's printing.
It just takes the file.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can feed it the CAD design for a beautiful, life-saving medical device, or you can feed it the design for a deadly weapon that will blow up in your face.
The printer doesn't judge.
It doesn't pause and say, hey, are you sure you want to print this? This seems really harmful. It just perfectly, flawlessly executes the code that the conscious mind types into the terminal.
It's just prints.
Right, and there is a story in her notes that absolutely chilled me, illustrating just how literal and unthinking this subconscious printer is.
Oh, the story about the little girl.
Yes. She talks about a woman who, when she was a little girl, loved to play make-believe, but her favorite game was playing Widow.
Such a dark game for a
Wow,
kid.
I know, right? She would dress up in black clothes, put on a long, sweeping black veil, and walk around the house acting out this tragic, sorrowful role.
And the adults just thought it was cute.
Exactly. They thought she was just being clever and theatrical. But Shinn points out that this image, accompanied by the deep, playful feeling of the role, was perfectly impressed upon that little girl's subconscious mind.
It is one of the most sobering examples in her work, because if you track the mechanics of what is happening there, the child is combining a vivid mental picture with strong emotional resonance.
The black veil and the feeling of grief.
Right. That is the exact formula for programming the subconscious. And what happens next in the story is that the girl grows up, she marries a man she is deeply, genuinely in love with.
And
within a very short time, he dies. She is left to wear the actual black clothes and the sweeping veil for many years.
oh my God. That's awful.
Now, from a conventional viewpoint, we would just call that a tragic coincidence. But if we analyze this through Shinn's system, the subconscious mind was simply fulfilling the blueprint that had been vividly and repeatedly handed to it years prior.
Because it doesn't know she was just playing.
Exactly. The subconscious doesn't understand the concept of a joke or a game or theater. It simply registered the code. This is the image we are building toward. This is the reality we must eventually manifest.
Okay, hold on, because this part genuinely freaked me out. Are we saying that every intrusive thought, every dark daydream, or every time a kid plays a morbid game, we are actively scheduling a tragedy?
That's a very common fear when people first hear this.
Because, I mean, my conscious mind is a mess of weird, anxious thoughts half the time. If my subconscious is literally building whatever flashes across my brain, that is terrifying.
It would be a chaos.
It feels like walking through a dynamite factory with a lit match.
That is the natural reaction to this concept, and it's why we have to examine the mechanism of impression. It isn't every fleeting thought that programs the subconscious.
Okay, phew.
Right? If that were true, the human race wouldn't survive a week. The key ingredient Shinn identifies is deep feeling. The subconscious is moved by emotion and clear, sustained visualization.
So it's about the weight you give it.
Yes, a passing anxious thought might flutter through the conscious mind, but if you don't anchor it with deep, resonant emotion or obsessive repetition, it doesn't leave a permanent groove on the subconscious.
So the little girl playing widow wasn't just having a passing thought.
No, she was deeply embodying the role, feeling it, repeating it, anchoring it in her nervous system. This is why the ancient Greek maxim to know thyself isn't just a nice philosophical suggestion in this framework.
It's basically a safety manual.
It is a matter of vital psychological safety. If our deeply held fears, our continuous vivid daydreams, and even our most repetitive jokes are treated as literal blueprints by our own minds, we have to become acutely aware of what code we are feeding into our system.
Right. It's about the emotional weight we attach to the thought. Which brings us to the third department of the mind. And honestly, the only thing that offers any hope in this setup.
The superconscious mind.
Yes, because if my conscious mind is a flawed, fearful, paranoid gatekeeper, and my subconscious mind is a blind, obedient, literal 3D printer,
You need better software.
I need something in the system that actually holds a good design. And Shinn calls the superconscious the God mind within each person.
It is the realm of perfect ideas.
She links it to Plato's concept of the perfect pattern, or what she terms the divine design. She argues that for every single person listening to this right now, there is a divine design for your life.
A place that you are to fill that no one else can fill.
Exactly. Something you are to do that no one else can do. The superconscious holds this perfect, flawless picture, but it usually just flashes across our conscious mind as a hunch, a sudden intuition.
Or an ideal that seems almost too good to be true.
Right.
And that dynamic explains the fundamental tension of the human experience. You have these three distinct layers operating simultaneously.
It's like they're competing.
In a way, the superconscious is constantly trying to beam this perfect blueprint, this divine design of health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression down to you. It communicates through those flashes of intuition.
But then the conscious mind gets in the way.
Exactly. The conscious mind, which is clouded by societal programming, past traumas, fear of lack, and rigid logic, intercepts that beautiful intuition.
And it immediately says, that's impossible. We don't have the money.
We don't have the education. The economy is terrible. And so the conscious mind rejects the perfect blueprint and instead feeds the subconscious a blueprint of limitation and failure.
So to play the game of life successfully, the entire objective is to bypass that fearful conscious intellect.
That's the goal.
You have to tap into the superconscious blueprint, pull it down, and impress that perfect design onto the subconscious.
Which begs the million-dollar question, doesn't it?
Yeah, how do we actually do that? How do we bypass a gatekeeper that is literally designed to worry?
Shinn says the primary tool we have for this, the main instrument for programming the subconscious, is the imagination.
She refers to the imagination as the scissors of the mind.
The scissors of the mind.
Oh.
It is a brilliant, highly evocative metaphor. She argues that the imagination is ever cutting, day by day, the pictures that we see in our mind's eye.
Cutting out our future reality.
Yes. And sooner or later, we meet our own creations in the outer world. But we have to expand our definition of imagination here.
How so?
It's not just sitting in a dark room visualizing a sports car. The most potent tool of the imagination, the primary way we wield these scissors, is through our spoken words.
Yes. This is where the material gets intensely convicting, especially for anyone who complains or uses self-deprecating humor as a defense mechanism.
Which is practically everyone.
Seriously, Shinn insists that words are not just sounds vibrating in the air. They are tremendous vibratory forces that are continuously, actively making laws for our lives.
She quotes the proverb, "Death and life are in the power of the tongue."
And she has these wild, specific examples of the cost of what she calls idle words. There's a story she recounts of a woman who once had a beautiful home and plenty of money.
But she didn't want to manage it all, right?
Right. She got tired of the responsibility of managing the house. She used to complain constantly to anyone who would listen. I'm sick and tired of things. I wish I lived in a trunk.
Such a specific thing to say.
I know. And Shinn notes that a few years later, the woman was living in exactly that, a literal trunk. Her wealth was gone, her home was gone, and she had spoken herself into destitution.
It is the literalism of the subconscious at work again. It heard the command, "I wish I lived in a trunk." It felt the deep emotional exhaustion and frustration the woman attached to the phrase.
And it just printed it.
Exactly. It got to work organizing her reality to fulfill the request. There was another example regarding a woman who had a great deal of money, but continually joked about getting ready for the poorhouse.
Oh man, the joking is so dangerous in this framework.
It is. She found it funny to feign poverty. It was her preferred flavor of humor. But within a few years, she was almost entirely destitute.
Because the subconscious didn't get the joke.
Right. She had vividly impressed her subconscious with a picture of lack and limitation, all under the guise of a joke. The subconscious does not have a sense of humor. It takes you at your word.
And perhaps the most relatable and therefore the most dangerous example she gives is the concept of the old-fashioned chat.
Oh, the old-fashioned chat.
This ruined my day because it is so accurate. Shinn breaks down this seemingly innocent social gathering. Say, you invite a friend over for tea. Or in modern terms, you go grab a beer after work.
Or you start a Slack thread with your favorite coworkers.
Yes. Shinn points out that this kind of interaction usually consists of an hour of 500 to 1,000 highly disruptive words.
Because what do people talk about?
Exactly. The principal topics of an old-fashioned chat are usually loss, lack, failure, sickness, and complaining about other people. Did you see what the boss did? Can you believe how expensive groceries are?
My back is killing me. I'm getting so old.
When you participate in this, she argues, you are collectively cutting out pictures of misery with those mental scissors.
You are.
Hmm.
And if we look at why we do this from a modern psychological perspective, complaining together is a deeply ingrained bonding mechanism.
We love to trauma bond.
We really do. When we share grievances, we get a hit of dopamine and oxytocin. We feel seen, validated, and connected to the group. It is tribal.
So it feels good in the moment.
But Shinn is arguing that the energetic and psychological cost of that bonding is catastrophic.
Wow.
By focusing your attention, your language, and your shared emotional resonance on lack and frustration, you are writing ironclad code into your subconscious that says, this is the reality we belong in. Maintain this state of lack.
Hearing this makes me hyper-aware of my own conversations. I mean, my coworkers and I bond over shared miseries constantly. It's practically the foundation of human socializing.
Hard to avoid.
So, what does this actually mean for our daily lives? Do we really have to police every single sentence that comes out of our mouths?
It can feel overwhelming.
Are we supposed to just smile blankly and pretend everything is great all the time, even when the world feels like it's on fire? Because that sounds exhausting.
And dangerous, frankly.
Honestly, it sounds a lot like toxic positivity, where you just repress your real feelings until you explode.
That is the immediate necessary pushback to this material.
Mm.
Does this philosophy demand toxic positivity?
Right, does it?
If we look closely at the mechanics of what she's teaching, the answer is no. Toxic positivity is a function of the conscious mind lying. It is plastering a fake smile over genuine distress.
Okay, so it's a surface-level fix.
Exactly. If you are terrified about your rent, but you force yourself to say, everything is awesome, I love being broke, your conscious mind knows you are lying.
And the subconscious.
More importantly, your subconscious feels the underlying terror. The fear is still the dominant vibration. Shinn's methodology is not about repression. It's about actively substituting momentum.
Substituting momentum. I like that.
It's about recognizing the mechanical nature of the mind and taking the wheel. She uses the metaphor of a phonograph record.
Right, the scratched record.
Exactly. She says that every thought and word is recorded on the sensitive disk of the subconscious. If you have been speaking words of lack, fear, and complaining, you have cut a bad record.
So how do you fix a bad record?
Her remedy is not to just sit in silence, police yourself, and repress your anxiety. Her remedy is to actively smash and demolish the old bad records by deliberately speaking words of power and conviction.
Oh, I see.
You don't just stop the old-fashioned chat. You replace it with a new-fashioned chat. You intentionally focus your language on what you want rather than what you fear.
So it's a deliberate, forceful redirection of focus.
Right. If you catch yourself complaining about being exhausted and overwhelmed, you don't pretend you aren't tired.
You acknowledge the feeling.
You acknowledge it, but you pivot the command. You state an expectation of vitality and clarity moving forward. You are retraining the subconscious by giving it superior, undeniable instructions.
So it's less about slapping a smiley face sticker on a broken engine and more about literally overwriting the old code with a new, stronger line of code.
Exactly. You have to give the subconscious a better blueprint.
And that realization transitions us into what is easily my favorite concept in this entire deep dive. Because it's one thing to say the right words, it's another thing entirely to physically interact with a reality that hasn't changed yet.
The physical application is where the rubber meets the road.
What do you do when your words say, I am prosperous, but your physical reality says your bank account is overdrawn?
It's the ultimate test.
This brings us to the law of prosperity and what Shinn calls digging ditches. The core idea here is the massive difference between passive wishing and active faith.
Shin says it's not enough to just ask for what you want.
Right, you must actively prepare for the arrival of what you have asked for, even when there isn't the slightest physical sign of it in sight.
And she roots this concept in a deeply metaphorical story from the text about three kings in the desert.
Yeah, it's a fascinating application of biblical allegory she draws from the book of 2 Kings.
The setup is dire.
Right. 3 kings are in the desert with their armies and their horses, and they are entirely out of water. They are facing absolute certain death.
They consult the prophet Elisha.
And his instruction to them is completely counterintuitive to the rational, fearful mind. He tells them, Ye shall not see wind, neither shall ye see rain, yet make this valley full of ditches.
In other words, you must physically prepare the ground for the water before there is any atmospheric evidence that water is coming.
Which is insane if you think about it from the perspective of a dehydrated, exhausted army. You want us to dig in the hard dirt, expending our last ounces of energy under a cloudless sky.
Exactly. The rational mind would scream, wait until you see the rain clouds, then start digging. Don't waste the energy.
Seriously.
But the metaphysical law Sheehan's is illustrating is that if they had waited to see the evidence, they wouldn't have been prepared to capture the blessing.
So the action came first.
The physical act of digging the ditches was the manifestation of their faith. It was the undeniable message to their subconscious and to the universe that the supply was already guaranteed.
It bridged the gap between the invisible desire and the physical manifestation. And the real-world applications she shares of this digging ditches concept are absolutely stunning. She tells the story of a woman looking for an apartment in New York City during a massive housing shortage.
Always a stressful situation.
Very. It was considered practically impossible to find a place. There were over 200 applicants for every available spot. Her friends are giving her the standard old-fashioned chat treatment.
Oh, I'm so sorry. You'll have to put your furniture in storage.
Yeah, it's hopeless.
Yeah.
But this woman refuses to accept that reality. She claims, through her spoken word, that she will get the right apartment. But then she takes it a step further to prove her faith.
This is the best part.
She decides to buy new blankets for the new apartment she doesn't have yet.
And notice the internal dialogue that happens next, because it perfectly illustrates the battle between the conscious and subconscious.
Right. The rational, fearful, conscious mind immediately chimes in and says, don't buy the blankets. What if you don't get the apartment?
You'll have wasted the money.
And you'll have these bulky blankets with nowhere to put them. And what does she do? She consciously overrides the fear. She says, I'll dig my dishes by buying the blankets.
He takes the action.
She buys them, acting as though she already has the apartment. She prepares for the manifestation. And the story concludes with her miraculously getting one of those highly coveted apartments in the exact neighborhood she wanted.
The blankets were her physical act of active faith.
The physical action bypasses the logical resistance of the conscious mind. It is a tangible anchor.
But Shinn takes this even further with another extraordinary example regarding a man in a highly precarious financial situation.
Oh, the fur coat story.
Yes. This man has roughly $700 to his name. That is his entire safety net. He wants a fur-lined overcoat, and he finds one that is on sale for $500.
Wait.
Now, any reasoning mind, any financial advisor, any logical conscious gatekeeper would scream that spending over 70% of your total net worth on a luxury clothing item is financial suicide.
It is objectively reckless. It's terrifying.
It is. But this man, operating on a sudden, powerful intuition rather than logical fear, tells his wife, if I get this coat, I'll make a ton of money.
Just off a hunch.
He buys the coat. And Shinn notes that about a month later, he receives a $10,000 commission.
Wow.
Now, why did this work? Shinn argues that the physical act of buying and wearing the coat made him feel so rich, so prosperous, that it fundamentally shifted his consciousness.
It elevated his frequency.
It linked him, vibratorily and psychologically, to success. Without the coat, he would have remained anchored in a consciousness of lack, hoarding his $700 in fear.
And he never would have attracted or been in the right headspace to close the $10,000 opportunity.
Exactly.
Okay, I have to stop you there because my logical brain is throwing up massive red flags.
I don't blame you.
If a financial planner is listening to this, they are probably having a heart attack. We are looking at stories where a woman looking for prosperity is down to her last $8, gets an intuitive hunch to take a train home, and spends her last pennies on car fare. We have a guy blowing his entire safety net on a fur coat. And there's another incredible story in her notes about a woman who is broke, waiting for money to manifest, and to prove her faith, she goes out and buys a luxurious pink enamel paper cutter.
Right, the paper cutter.
Why? Because she tells herself she needs a nice fancy tool to open the large checks she is expecting in the mail.
That's the logic.
From a logical spreadsheets and budgets perspective, this sounds like we are encouraging sheer financial recklessness. I mean, spending your last $8 on a hunch? Blowing your savings on a coat?
It sounds absurd.
How do we reconcile this without just sounding like we're telling people to act irresponsibly and max out their credit cards?
It is the most critical distinction to make in this entire philosophy. And if we don't understand the underlying mechanics, it does just look like reckless consumerism.
So what's the missing piece?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Shinn is absolutely not advocating for mindless spending, retail therapy, or impulsive buying born out of desire for instant gratification. The difference between financial ruin and manifestation lies entirely in the motive behind the action. Consider what hoarding and saving actually represent psychologically.
Security.
While logically sound to the conscious mind, hoarding often stems from a deep-seated, paralyzing fear of lack. When you hoard your money out of fear, you are essentially whispering to your subconscious, there's not enough.
The universe is a place of scarcity.
Right. I am in danger and my supply is strictly limited to what is currently in this bank account.
And because the subconscious takes that literally, it says, okay, the blueprint is scarcity. I will manifest more situations that cause you to lack.
Exactly. This fear-based hoarding manifests poverty. However, when an individual spends fearlessly, and this is the crucial caveat, specifically when guided by a clear intuition or a hunch, not just a passing desire.
So it can't just be, I want a shiny new thing.
No, it has to be a true intuition. When they act on that, they break that psychological barrier of lack. They're demonstrating to the literal subconscious mind that the universe is an unfailing, inexhaustible bank.
Let's look at the pink paper cutter then.
Right. To the rational mind, buying a desk accessory when you are broke is stupid. But metaphysically, it wasn't just a purchase. It was a bridge of active faith.
Because it was tied to a specific expectation.
It was a physical object that proved to her subconscious that the checks were already in the mail. Every time she looked at the paper cutter, her subconscious received a jolt of expectancy, not fear.
It is about aligning the physical action with the desired outcome to eliminate all internal doubt.
Exactly.
That distinction makes a lot of sense. It's the difference between buying a luxury coat because you are insecure and want to look flashy to your neighbors versus buying the coat because a deep intuition is telling you it's the specific psychological key you need.
To unlock a higher frequency of confidence for your business.
One is driven by ego and lack. The other is driven by faith and abundance. It's wild, but you can clearly see the psychological mechanism at play.
It's all about the internal driver.
But this raises the next obvious issue. What happens when things don't go smoothly?
Because they rarely do.
Right. You've watched your words. You've smashed the bad records. You've bought the pink paper cutter. You are digging your ditches. But suddenly, a massive obstacle appears. A deal falls through. Someone actively tries to sabotage you.
The real world hits.
That takes us directly into Shinn's law of non-resistance and the concept of baptizing events. She starts the section by talking about the absolute futility of fighting what we perceive as evil.
She quotes a Chinese proverb here.
Yeah, that water is the most powerful element on Earth because it is perfectly non-resistant. It doesn't fight, it simply flows around, and yet it can wear away solid rock and sweep all before it.
It's a beautiful image.
Shinn actually argues something quite radical here. She says there is no real evil to fight in the world. There is only a false belief in two powers, good and evil, which stems from humanity being in a state of soul sleep.
Or mass hypnosis by race belief.
Right.
It is a radical, non-dualistic perspective that challenges everything we are taught about conflict resolution. She posits that what we call evil or obstacles only have the power that you grant them through your active resistance.
Because what you resist persists.
She states this with absolute clarity. Resistance is hell. When you resist a situation, when you get angry, when you fight back, when you obsess over how unfair it is, you are emotionally anchoring yourself to it.
So by fighting it, you're tying yourself to it.
By resisting it, you guarantee that it will remain in your experience. because you are constantly feeding it energy. She provides a perfect, deeply psychological example of this in the text.
The story about the mother.
Yes, there is a woman who runs away from her home because she deeply dislikes her mother. Her mother is highly critical, domineering, and controlling. The woman gets married specifically to escape this toxic environment.
A classic escape route.
But because she ran away in a state of deep emotional resistance, resentment, and anger, what happens? She ends up marrying a man who is the exact psychological duplicate of her mother.
Oh man, that is so hauntingly true. You see this all the time. People quit a toxic job in a fiery rage, only to find the exact same toxic boss with a different name at the next company.
Or they leave a narcissist, only to date another narcissist.
Precisely. She successfully changed her physical geography, but because her subconscious was still intensely focused on the traits she was resisting, the domineering control, she simply manifested the exact same situation in a different form.
As Shinn puts it, running away from a problem ensures it will run after you.
Because the subconscious doesn't understand, I don't want this. It just hears, focus on domineering control, and builds it.
Exactly.
So if resistance is literally hell and fighting our obstacles just glues them to us, how do we handle it when everything hits the fan? This is where she introduces the alchemy of baptizing failure.
This is a fascinating strategy.
I found it absolutely incredible, if a bit difficult to wrap my head around. She talks about a metaphysician who used to be a clergyman. In his old life, he baptized children. But now, he says, he baptizes events.
He names the events.
He gives every single event that happens to him the exact same name. If he experiences a massive failure, a bankruptcy, a public humiliation, he stands over it and baptizes its success. He demands that the apparent failure transmute into success.
And we must be very careful to understand the mechanism here, because this is not just an exercise in delusional optimism.
It's not just slapping a positive label on a disaster.
No, it is a highly calculated method of emotional neutralization. Let's look at the specific anecdote Shinn uses to illustrate how this works in practice.
The woman with the negative business partner.
Right. There is a woman who is doing metaphysical work to demonstrate money. She is trying to build her business, but she is continually thrown into business dealings with a specific man who heavily projects poverty.
He's the ultimate old-fashioned chat guy.
He constantly talks about lack, limitation, how bad the economy is, and how they will likely fail. The woman begins to catch his poverty thoughts. She starts failing, and she begins to deeply resent him.
She blames him for her lack of success.
She is completely resisting the situation, wishing he would get fired or leave.
Which, according to the rules, is just anchoring him more deeply into her reality.
Exactly. She realizes she is seeing two powers. She is giving this man the power to harm her supply. So she shifts her strategy entirely. She stops fighting.
She drops the resistance.
She blesses the man, and she literally baptizes the entire miserable situation success. She affirms, against all logic, that this man is actually there for her good and her prosperity.
And let's look at what happens. By stripping the situation of her emotional resistance, she alters the energetic dynamic. She stops feeding the conflict.
And the result is immediate.
Soon after, through this very man, she meets a woman who pays her several $1,000s for a service. And shortly after that, the negative man harmoniously moves to a different city and fades from her life entirely.
She recognized him as a golden link in her chain of good. By blessing him, she robbed him of all his negative ammunition.
But I have to be honest, this is the exact moment where my inner skeptic starts waving a massive red flag. And I know anyone listening who has dealt with difficult people is probably thinking the same thing.
What's the concern?
Hold on. Does non-resistance mean becoming a doormat? If someone is treating you terribly in a business negotiation or verbally abusing you or stealing from you, does Shinn really expect you to just smile, bless them, baptize its success, and let them walk all over you?
It's a very fair question.
Because that sounds like a recipe for getting taken advantage of by every bad actor on the planet.
It's a crucial, necessary distinction. And Shinn's own students asked her the exact same thing. I don't want to be a doormat. How do I protect myself?
What does she tell them?
Her reply is fundamental to understanding the depth of this system. She said, when you use non-resistance with wisdom, no one will ever be able to walk over you.
Non-resistance with wisdom.
We have to redefine what non-resistance means. It does not mean physical inaction, passivity, or enabling abuse. It means achieving a state of impenetrable internal poise, where you are emotionally undisturbed by the appearance of the threat.
Okay, so you're not freaking out inside.
It is about stripping the opponent or the situation of its emotional leverage by refusing to react with fear, anger, or panic.
So it's an internal state, not necessarily an external behavior.
Precisely. Let's take your boardroom example. If someone is trying to cheat you in a negotiation, the fearful, resistant response is to fight, scream, get defensive, and panic.
Which gives them what they want.
What happens biologically? Your amygdala hijacks your brain, your cognitive abilities plummet, and you trap yourself in their chaotic, aggressive vibration.
Yeah.
You have given them the power.
So what's the alternative?
The wise, non-resistant response is to remain completely internally calm. You recognize that your true supply, your ultimate well-being, cannot actually be stolen by this person. From that state of perfect poise, you take whatever clear, intuitive action is required. You might calmly say, "No, I am not accepting those terms," and walk out of the room.
You aren't being a doormat, but you also aren't resisting them emotionally.
Exactly. The lack of emotional response causes the inharmonious situation to lose its anchor in your reality. It falls away of its own weight because you didn't give it anything to push against.
Wow. Okay. So it's about holding your internal ground so fiercely, so calmly, that the external chaos just bounces off you. You become the water wearing away the rock.
Exactly.
That is incredibly powerful. And it ties intimately into the next major concept we need to explore, which deals with how our actions, thoughts, and resistance loop back to us over time.
Ah, the game of boomerangs.
Yes, karma versus grace. She explains that karma is simply the Sanskrit word for comeback. The fundamental rule of the game is that life is a giant boomerang. Every single thought, every deed, every word you send out returns to you with astounding mathematical accuracy.
Yes, she refers to it as the law of use and misuse, which is essentially the spiritual law of cause and effect. What you sow, you reap.
The examples she gives are wild.
And the notes she provides are filled with incredibly specific, sometimes almost comical examples of this boomerang effect functioning in real time. Consider the story of the woman who was irritable at home.
Oh, at the dinner table.
Right. Her aunt was trying to talk to her during dinner, just making conversation, and the woman, annoyed, snapped, "No more talk. I wish to eat in peace."
A completely relatable moment of family frustration.
Entirely relatable. But look at the boomerang. The very next day, this same woman is at a high-stakes lunch with another woman she desperately wants to impress.
It's an important relationship.
She is talking animatedly, trying to make a good impression, and the woman looks across the table at her and snaps the exact same phrase. "No more talk. I wish to eat in peace."
Ouch.
The karma, the exact vibratory force of her words, returned immediately and hit her in a much more painful scenario.
It's so painfully literal. It's like the universe is just a giant mirror repeating your exact lines back to you. And then there is the story of the stage money, which just proves that this karmic law has zero sense of humor.
No humor at all.
A woman finds a bunch of fake stage money and decides to send it to a friend in the mail purely as a practical joke. It's meant to be funny.
Just a gag.
But shortly after, the woman goes to her actual bank, cashes a check, and later realizes the teller accidentally slipped a counterfeit $20 bill into her cash.
The boomerang.
She sent out fake money as a joke, and the universe boomeranged fake money right back into her actual finances. It doesn't recognize the joke, it just recognizes the action of distributing false currency.
And we see the much darker side of this with the law of use, regarding the woman who hoarded the 67 necklaces.
Oh, that one is rough.
That story is a profound warning about the stagnation of energy.
Right. She had 67 beautiful necklaces, but she kept them carefully wrapped in tissue paper and never wore them. She had closets full of clothes that never saw the light of day.
She was hoarding beauty and wealth out of some deep-seated fear of ruining them.
And Shinn points out that by violating the law of use, by hoarding instead of circulating energy, this woman eventually suffered a physical paralysis in her arms.
A physical manifestation of her mental state.
She was rendered literally incapable of holding on to things, and eventually her wealth and her possessions were taken over by others to manage. Her fear of losing her things manifested as the physical inability to hold them.
It illustrates that energy must flow. Money, love, possessions. They are all forms of energy designed for use and circulation. When you dam up a river out of fear, the water becomes toxic.
But there is a very important nuance here regarding where we place our faith, which dictates how these karmic boomerangs operate. The text discusses the tension between true faith and superstition.
Yes, this part was fascinating.
Shinn talks about two businessmen in her class who had been experiencing great success for months. They are studying the principles, applying the laws, and business is booming.
Then suddenly, their businesses go completely to smash.
Everything falls apart simultaneously. When Shin sits down to analyze the situation with them, she discovers that instead of continuing to rely on spiritual principles, they had both gone out and bought lucky monkeys.
These little superstitious charms.
Yeah, they had transferred their faith from the unfailing universal supply to these little wooden statues.
Which represents a massive psychological regression. The object itself, the lucky monkey, the rabbit's foot, the lucky coin, has no inherent power.
It's just wood or metal.
It only possesses the power of the expectancy that you project onto it. It is a crutch for the conscious mind. But the moment you advance in understanding, you can no longer rely on external crutches.
Because it shows you still have fear.
When these businessmen put their trust in the monkeys, they were essentially saying, the universe isn't reliable, but this object is. And the moment their underlying fear resurfaced, the monkeys, of course, couldn't save them.
Their faith was misplaced, and the boomerang of fear returned as business failure. But this brings us to what might be the most comforting synthesis in Shin's entire philosophy. Because if I am constantly making mistakes, if I'm saying the wrong things, harboring resentment, occasionally relying on lucky monkeys, or snapping at my family, am I just doomed?
Well, it feels like you'd be trapped.
Am I trapped in an endless, brutal cycle of karmic payback? Shin introduces a concept that actually supersedes the mechanical law of karma, which is the law of grace or the law of forgiveness.
It is the ultimate escape hatch from the cause and effect loop. She explains that calling on the law of forgiveness actively neutralizes past mistakes.
So it wipes the slate clean.
It frees the individual from the brutal mechanical payback of karma. It operates on a higher frequency. Let's return to the woman with the counterfeit $20 bill.
A practical joke gone wrong.
When she realizes it was karmic payback for her stage money joke, she doesn't just accept the loss and say, well, I deserve this. That would be submitting to karma.
What does she do instead?
Instead, she calls on the law of forgiveness to neutralize the situation. She recognizes that under grace, she cannot lose what is rightfully hers.
So she shifts her mindset.
By forgiving herself and releasing the fear, she shifts her vibration. Then completely fearlessly, she goes back to the bank, tells the teller a mistake was made.
And to her utter surprise, they apologize and hand her a real $20 bill. The grace neutralized the karmic consequence the exact moment she understood the lesson and operated without fear.
A beautiful mechanism.
That is such a massive relief, honestly, because otherwise the pressure of playing this game perfectly would be completely paralyzing. Every time I said a negative word, I'd be waiting for the piano to drop on my head.
Speaking of being paralyzed, let's look at the internal struggle of actually applying this.
Okay.
We've established that the subconscious is running the show, but Shin makes a startling observation. She says it is almost impossible to direct the subconscious using the conscious reasoning mind.
Why is that?
Because the intellect is just too filled with doubts, logic, and fears. Every time you try to consciously force a positive thought like, I am wealthy, I am healthy, your intellect is in the background screaming.
Yeah, right. Look at your bank account. Look at your medical chart. You're lying.
Exactly. So if we can't use the conscious mind to boss around the subconscious, what do we actually do?
Right.
Shin introduces the technique of casting the burden.
This is a profound, incredibly elegant psychological mechanism. Because the conscious mind is too burdened with the how, the when, and the what if, it cannot maintain the clear, poised vision required to impress the subconscious.
It creates interference.
Therefore, Shin advises handing the problem over completely to the superconscious, the Christ within, the realm of perfect ideas. You literally cast the burden.
And she has a great story for this.
She does. She provides a highly relatable, mundane example of a woman who was trying to figure out how to make room in her small studio apartment for a new piano that was arriving immediately.
The spatial geometry nightmare.
Her conscious mind was frantically trying to solve it, stressing over where to move the old piano, measuring walls, panicking, and finding no logical solution. The more she worried, the more stuck and anxious she became.
Right, she was entirely in the grip of the carnal, anxious mind. The intellect was spinning its wheels.
But then she remembers the law. She actively decides to stop consciously fretting. She states out loud, I cast this burden on the Christ within, and I go free.
She hands it over.
She essentially throws her hands up and says, Superconscious, you figure it out, I am done worrying. And within moments of genuinely dropping the mental anguish, the phone rings.
A friend calls completely out of the blue.
Asks if she can rent the old piano, and it gets moved out just minutes before the new one arrives. By casting the burden, she bypassed her own anxious intellect.
She got out of her own way so the perfect solution could manifest without her interference.
But there is a massive warning in Shinn's notes here about what happens internally when we start doing this work. Shinn talks about the phenomenon of darkness before the dawn.
Yes, and this is crucial for anyone attempting to apply these principles, because it often feels like you are failing when you are actually succeeding.
How so?
Very often, when you begin treating a situation, when you cast the burden, state your affirmations, and make a high spiritual demand, instead of immediate peace, a deep, thick depression or a massive surge of anxiety clouds your consciousness.
Or things go wrong externally.
Exactly. Your car breaks down, you lose a client. Shinn explains this mechanically. She says that by introducing this high-frequency truth into your system, you are shining a bright light into the dark depths of your subconscious.
Oh, I see where this is going.
And what happens when you disturb the depths? The old derelicts, the deep-seated fears, traumas, and race beliefs of the ages that have been hiding down there are forced to rise to the surface to be expelled.
You are stirring up the mud to clean the water.
As she poetically puts it, you must remain in the dark until you can see in the dark. The emergence of intense fear is not a sign of failure. It is a symptom of the subconscious being actively cleansed.
You must remain in the dark until you can see in the dark. That gives me absolute chills. It completely reframes anxiety.
It does.
Instead of seeing anxiety as a permanent state or a sign that something is wrong, you see it as debris leaving the building. It's the exhaust fumes of your old programming.
That's a great way to put it.
And what is Shinn's ultimate remedy for defeating this fear when it rises up? She says you have to walk directly up to it. She says, the lion takes its fierceness from your fear.
If you run away from the lion runs after you.
But if you walk right up to it, look it in the eye, it disappears. There's the story of the woman who is absolutely terrified to deliver a specific, highly uncomfortable message to an acquaintance.
She was agonizing over it.
Her reasoning mind was begging her to avoid the conflict. Finally, she decides to walk up to the lion. She resolves to go deliver the message fearlessly, no matter the consequence.
She arms herself with courage.
She walks to the meeting place, opens her mouth to deliver the dreaded news, and the acquaintance casually mentions that the person the message was about has just left town, making the entire confrontation completely unnecessary.
The moment she proved she was willing to face the fear without running, the universe dissolved the obstacle.
It is the ultimate test of faith in this system. The external world reconfigures itself the exact moment the internal fear is vanquished. If you are willing to face the lion, you discover it was an illusion all along.
And this leads us directly to the highest frequency in Shinn's entire framework, the ultimate dissolver of fear, which is love.
But we have to be very, very careful here, because Shinn draws a sharp, unforgiving line between real spiritual love and what we typically experience as selfish human affection.
Yeah, she does not pull her punches on this topic.
She defines real love as completely selfless, entirely free from fear, and pouring itself out without demanding any return whatsoever. Its joy is purely in the act of giving.
She warns that jealousy, possessiveness, and tyranny completely destroy love because they are rooted in fear of loss.
And fear of loss, as we know, tells the literal subconscious to manifest actual loss.
She shares this deeply moving, almost cinematic story about a woman who came to her in absolute suicidal despair.
The story about the cap.
Yes. The man she loved, a captain she referred to as the Cap, had left her for other women and brutally told her he never intended to marry her. The woman was consumed with jealousy, resentment, and agony.
She was weeping, hoping he would suffer as much as he made her suffer.
And Shinn's response to this heartbroken woman is bracingly direct. It lacks any conventional sympathy. She tells her, "You are not loving that man, you are hating him."
Wow, that's harsh.
She explains the metaphysical law. You can never receive what you have never given. If you want a perfect, harmonious love, you must emit a perfect, unselfish love.
So what does she tell her to do?
She instructs the woman to stop condemning him, to demand absolutely nothing in return, and to genuinely deeply bless him wherever he is. Shinn introduces a practice used by a brotherhood in India, where instead of saying good morning, they say, "I salute the divinity in you."
I love that phrase.
She tells the weeping woman to salute the divinity in the Cap, to see only his perfect divine self, regardless of his current terrible actions.
And it's such a hard pill to swallow. The woman's initial reaction is exactly what mine would be. She initially refuses. She says, I won't bless him unless I know where he is.
Which is just peak human nature.
We want to control the outcome. We want to know that our blessing is working as a manipulation tactic. But gradually, over months, she does the real work. She works on herself, becoming poised, losing her resentment.
And one day, she genuinely reaches that state of non-resistance.
She realizes she is perfectly fine on her own. She says out loud with total sincerity, "God bless the cap wherever he is." She completely drops the need to possess him. She becomes a complete, unbroken circle within herself.
And what happens?
Shin gets a letter a few weeks later. The woman writes, "We are married." The exact moment she stopped resenting him, the moment she stopped suffocating the energetic connection with fear and jealousy, he returned and proposed.
It perfectly illustrates the law. What you release fearlessly returns to you. Real love does not bind, it frees. And when you operate from that high frequency of fearless release, you open yourself up to the highest form of guidance available in the human experience.
Which Shin identifies as intuition.
Intuition is the direct communication mechanism of the superconscious. When you have cast the burden and asked for your divine design, the answers don't come as a booming voice from the sky.
They come through subtle hunches.
And the key characteristic of intuition, Shin notes, is that it does not explain. It simply points the way. The reasoning, conscious mind demands a 10-point plan, a spreadsheet, and a guarantee of success.
But intuition just gives you a sudden urge, a feeling, or even a scent.
Like the incredible story of the woman who had 3 job offers.
Yes, she has 2 offers in New York and 1 in Palm Beach, Florida, and she cannot decide. The logical mind is weighing pros and cons, and the time limit is running out.
So she demands a definite lead from the universe.
And she calls Shin the next day and says, "When I woke up this morning, I could smell Palm Beach." She could literally smell the balmy fragrance of Florida in her New York apartment.
It made absolutely no logical sense, but it was the unerring guide of the superconscious.
She took the job in Palm Beach, and it turned out to be a massive success. It proves that when you demand the divine design, the universe will bypass your logic and literally send you the scent of your destiny.
Which brings us to the climax of this entire deep dive, the concept of the divine design itself.
Shin emphasizes that every single person has a perfect pattern, a specific place you are meant to fill.
And the hallmark of discovering and executing your divine design is that perfect self-expression is never a labor. It is of such absorbing, thrilling interest that it feels almost like play.
This is why she cautions so strongly against using your willpower to force specific manifestations.
If you use your conscious willpower to force a specific job or force a specific person to be with you, you might actually get it, but it will be ill-got and bring endless trouble because it is not the divine plan.
Instead, the ultimate, highest demand we can make is for the divine design to manifest under grace in a perfect way.
We must be willing to let go of our narrow, limited, conscious desires to allow the superconscious to deliver the masterpiece it has already planned for us.
Under grace in a perfect way. That really is the cheat code to the whole game. Okay, we have covered an incredible amount of psychological and spiritual ground today. Let's try to synthesize the massive journey of this deep dive.
We started with the default assumption that life is an exhausting battle.
And we're ending with the revelation that it is a highly responsive game of giving and receiving. The rules of this game are deceptively simple, but profoundly difficult to master in practice.
Fearless faith, absolute non-resistance, and selfless love.
To play it successfully, we have to recognize and turn down the volume on the reasoning, fearful, conscious mind that is obsessed with lack and disease.
We have to use the scissors of the mind, our vivid imagination and our spoken words, to reprogram that literal, powerful 3D printer of the subconscious.
We have to dig physical ditches of active faith. We have to baptize our deepest failures as success to strip them of their power, and we have to salute the divinity in the people who drive us absolutely crazy.
It is a complete and total inversion of how most of us are taught to operate in the modern world. It requires moving from a state of anxious, constant manipulation to a state of poised, peaceful expectancy.
It asks us to recognize the profound truth that our casual words are vibratory laws, that our financial hoarding actually stems from a fear that creates poverty, and that our emotional resistance to reality is the very thing trapping us in hell.
But the ultimate promise of Shin's work is staggering. If you can master these principles, if you can genuinely cast the burden to the superconscious within, walk fearlessly up to the lions of your anxieties, and demand only your divine design.
You can literally rebuild your body, remold your affairs, and bring heaven upon earth.
Exactly.
And that brings me directly to you, the listener. I want to leave you with a specific, highly challenging thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your week. Shin tells us that every man is a golden link in the chain of my good.
every single person.
So I want you to picture the person who frustrated you the most this week. The toxic coworker, the difficult family member, the driver who cut you off. If you completely drop your resistance right now and you genuinely, internally bless them, what invisible ammunition do you rob them of?
That's a great question.
What if that exact person is simply a mirror, perfectly reflecting a deeply held fear in your own subconscious, just waiting for you to rewrite the script?
It changes the entire paradigm when you realize you are the one holding the pen.
It really does. Thank you for taking this massive journey into the architecture of your own mind with us. Watch your words today. Put down the heavy burden you've been carrying and try to look with wonder at that which is before you, because the
Right.
game is already rigged in your favor. You just have to know how to play it.